This is my recording for clinical practice number 2 for EDAD 696. It'll also double as video practitioner journal number 4 for EDAD 608. So in my observation of an elementary and a secondary dean of students and their discipline procedures, I had a couple takeaways. It was a really unique experience because it was on the same campus, the elementary, middle, and high school actually. So it was a TK through 12 school, all in one facility that had just undergone a lot of changes. They just recently had a gym built, a playground built. So last year they actually did not have even the recreation area required for kids to play, especially the elementary kids. So, the elementary dean, the secondary dean who used to oversee elementary, impressed upon me just the importance of space consideration and those spatial logistics when it comes to planning supervision. She was mentioning how, last year there were a lot of injuries and student accidents because kids were playing on an area not designated for recreation. It was pretty much just a concrete or like sidewalk area. And this year, now they had the play space, they had a playground, they had a more open area, still no grass. But she mentioned how, the same number of kids, just a different space, less injuries, but there were a lot more behavioral issues because now it was a wider area to monitor and there were a lot of blind spots. So kids, both elementary and middle school and high school actually even too, were misbehaving, doing things that were breaking school rules or just safety concerns because the school wasn't prepared with the number of supervision staff required to monitor this much larger space. So that was an interesting perspective from someone who works in a school where there's so many different grade levels, a new facility to consider, and the challenges of making sure all the kids are monitored safely and consistently when there's a huge need for supervision there because the lunches are staggered one after the other. So, it's just like 2 hours of lunch supervision alone, not even counting the nutrition times that they have. Another important thing that I took away is just the communication that's required between all the people monitoring and supervising and in charge of safety. So at the school, they had the 2 deans who were in charge of supervision safety. They had other administrators, deans of academics, college counselor, principals, and they all helped out with supervision, but you could tell it wasn't their main or primary concern. There's only one campus supervisor, so essentially the team in charge of supervision comprised of 3 people, and this is for close to 700 kids. Now, teachers did supervise, and there was a lot of paraprofessionals and aides that helped, but I could tell that those 2 deans and that safety coordinator, the campus supervisor, were just in constant communication, and I could tell that they relied on each other a lot. I felt like it was maybe not the best setup to monitor that many kids, although, of course, it wasn't 700 kids out at once. I think the largest lunch that they had was an elementary lunch when there was like 110 kids out at once. But just the importance of consistent communication, having set posts, having clear guidelines for what active supervision is. Both deans mentioned that just because an adult's outside monitoring doesn't mean they're actively supervising and being vigilant. And then the last thing that I took away from shadowing the deans was the procedural side of the reflection committee, and subsequently one of the situations that necessitated a recommendation for suspension. It was thoroughly documented. There was strict procedural guidelines, very strict rules about who was supposed to recommend those higher level consequences, who was in charge of confirming or denying the recommendation, and then the appeals process that guarantees due process for students and parents if they choose to contest or they don't agree with the findings of the school and the administrators. So those are my takeaways.